Hello and welcome to the Books, Crypto and Digital Assets weekly catch-up on Zoom. This is Sunday the 30th of July 2023, and this week we're going to be talking about crypto security and regulation and a whole load of other things as well. Some really interesting insights from some guests who came on today, so stick around, hope you enjoy it. If you'd like to come to a future meeting, these are held every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. UK time, open to everybody, novices and experts alike. Do click on the subscribe, like, make comments. Even better, just come on to a future session. So with that, let's see who's going to come and join us today. Hey, Martin. Hello.
Hi, Gary. I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good of you to join us. And we've got a couple of others as well. We've got Rex on. Hey, Rex.
Hi, guys.
Hey, so Rex isn't a dog after all. Hey, Rex. And we've got G as well. No, G's staying quiet at the moment. So we've got Fernando's just coming in as well. Hey, Fernando. Is that Sausan? Is that how you pronounce your name? It says Sausan Zachary.
Hello. Yeah, hello.
Hey, did I say your name correctly? My apologies.
Yes, Sausan.
Excellent. Okay.
Sausan.
Hey, good to meet you all. Some new faces here. Hello there. I'm guessing all of you are new to these sessions, and this is the first one you belong to. These are totally open. We don't have a pre-recorded script or an agenda or anything like that. We end up talking about whatever you folks want to talk about. So if you're working on any projects or anything, this is an opportunity for you to share information about what you're doing. If you're a beginner and you've got basic questions, because the whole blockchain, crypto, ICO, STO, TG world is filled with buzz phrases and everything. So it's not an opportunity to learn, sure. And if anyone's got any knowledge or any news or anything that they want to bring to the party, then please let us know as well. So I don't know, Martin, maybe we should start, ask you, just give a brief intro to yourself. What brings you along today and what your interest is?
Yes, of course. It's actually my second time. I've been on this meetup call like a few months ago. Not sure if you remember. Either way, I'm crypto enthusiast. It's my first cycle actually, so I'm fairly new to all this. Still, I'm gaining experience very fast. Mostly interested in degen things as someone who's late to the party. It's a bit challenging to get on Bitcoin, ETH, and other established projects. So I'm looking for more opportunities around that. Interested in a few narratives at the moment, researching, reading white papers, going deep into that. That's basically where I'm at with this.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing that, Martin. It's awesome. Maybe could you share a little bit about yourself? What brings you along today?
Hello all. First, thank you so much that I have me in your nice group. I hear about it from some friends, and I'm new in meetup, and I would like to learn to get more experience. I'm Sausan from Egypt. I am interior design. I live in Germany now. And I would like to learn for my business because I have in Egypt a real estate company and construction company, and I love to get more experience from meeting like that. So interesting for me.
Excellent. Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of projects at the moment that are getting involved in real estate and tokenization and fractional ownership and that kind of thing. And most of them seem to fail or disappear. So it is a really interesting area. Definitely when someone gets it right, it'll be a fascinating thing. So welcome, thanks for joining us. And Rex, what brings you along today? Which planet are you on at the moment?
I'm actually hailing from Dubai. Well, it doesn't look like Dubai in the background, but yeah. So this is my alias. For now, I'll just keep my name off the record. I'm actually a consultant at one of the big four consulting firms. I do work with crypto consulting for governments. I also am the designer of the Saudi electronic invoicing standard. and I have a DeFi startup. I'm a founder, and I've been working for a couple of years now on this startup. We just went on mainnet. It's called Bark.finance during CC. And we're starting a bit of a promo for our project. We're doing a seed raise at the same time, and we're learning about how to build a community, what the response is to what we're building and what we've already built. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Cool. So the Saudi invoicing, is that blockchain based or is that traditional technology?
Well, it's a data standard, but we were able to smuggle in a fair deal of crypto in there. So the law defines that every invoice has to have a hash. The format for the invoices is defined. It's an XML format. So you can look at it. It's called Fatura, Fatoora. If you look it up, Fatura Saudi, you'll see the standard. It's open source, the EPL license, the actual invoicing standard. It has a QR code standard on top of it so that you can stamp a smallish QR code on the actual invoice that contains the hash and some crucial information from the invoice itself. So in a way, I guess you could say the invoices are blockchain compatible. Each one could be an NFT. Yep. And it's out there for anybody to start implementing, although I'm not in a position to do that.
Okay. I guess it's similar in a way, the way we've got things like ISO 20022, which is the standard for payments. And it's kind of like a messaging standard, which is being adopted by the likes of Swift, who do payments, but also there are some cryptocurrencies such as XRP, XLM, IOTA, and a couple of others that follow that standard. So I love standards because standards allow interoperability. They make things more portable, more easy to use. That's really interesting to know. Oh, thanks for sharing that.
This one is based on an ISO XML standard. It's the PEPL BIS one. I forget which one is underneath. I forget the number for the time being. I'll look it up and I'll mention it in a moment. But it's also ISO standard based.
I think when you can get to quote specific ISO standards off the top of your head, that's when you've achieved true geekery in terms of insight now.
I could do it 2 years ago when I did this, but yeah, it's slipped my mind right now.
That's fair. There's so many of them. While we've got a couple of others on, then Elena, I don't know if you want to say hi and tell everyone about yourself a little bit.
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see new people here on the call. I'm Elena. It's not my first meeting here, and I love coming to these meetings with Gary and talk about blockchain. This is more of my hobby. I love to read about it or to learn about it in my free time. And there's a fair chance of meeting interesting people here on the Zoom call. So that's why I value it and come back every Sunday.
Elena has been with us for a long time, and I love the way she asks some wonderfully simple questions, because they're the best ones, and occasionally she'll throw these things in, and it makes you really think. And I love those questions, so I love it when Elena joins us. And sorry, Rex, you just you put in there Saudi Fatura standard is ISO EN 16931. There's another one for me to add to my collection of ISO standards to look at. Thanks for sharing that. Great, Elena. Thanks for the intro. JT, I don't know if you want to come and say hi. You want to pop off mute? Come and tell us who you are and what you're up to with relays.
Hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I think some of you know already. I've been running relays for a while now in the background, and we're coming out to market, so it's just quite hard to jump from when you are in actually core development and jumping to go to market. So many things to align. That's why sometimes you don't see me here, Gary, I'm traveling and all that stuff. But Relays is really a decentralized communications network. Think about you are on Zoom, so it's a Web3 Zoom, yeah, chat, Discord, you name it, so anything communications. The reason why we've done it is because majority of communications are all centralized, and with centralization comes many other things that tend to be quite nasty, as you all know, like monitoring of calls, potentially, of course, easy to hack by anyone who has understands cybersecurity, because the communications without us all understanding the proper encryption, which is all usually black boxes, like the app we're using at the moment. We do not understand what's happening behind the scenes.
So I certainly find it fascinating because it's one of the proper decentralized video conferencing facilities that I've seen. It's quite impressive. And you're using smart contracts as well for verification, aren't you? In some ways, is that right?
Yeah. So what we do is it's a combination of multi-chain. Yeah. So we have smart contracts built on several chains. As part of the strategy, we started only with the first one at the moment, which is NIR protocol, and then we're just going to start to roll out in discussion with about 4 or 5 layer 1, layer 2s, and ZK as well. We need to build the next one, but also our own network.
Okay.
Because, for example, with video, because we're all participating in different parts of the world, the nodes from Google, from Zoom, from Microsoft Teams, whatever you use, are all over the world to facilitate this peer-to-peer and all being on an HD call. Yeah. So of course, they run the nodes. Yeah. We don't know what happens there. As they receive from one node and forward to the next node. It's all centralized, yeah. So we know what happens. Either I'm not saying they do it on purpose, but of course, accidents can happen if you know what I mean. So, and the monitoring and so on. So by decentralizing all of that, you can run a node now, Gary. By the way, anybody can just go on the website, just follow instructions. We have for Linux, for Windows, and for Mac. And of course, you get rewarded our tokens. So we're in testnet at the moment. So I ask anyone who wants to participate, go ahead and start to use it as well. Soon we'll provide the record button so you can switch from Zoom to Relays, Gary. Anybody can join them,
Maybe we'll check that out. So that's relays, RELAYZ.io. Cool, interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I just want to see if G wants to come off mute and wants to introduce themselves, or if G's just listening at the moment and watching, or maybe they can send a message through chat facility. Oh, they come off mute. Hey, G.
Hey, good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Come on, tell us who you are and what your interest is, for those who don't know you.
Okay, it's not my first meeting. I have been sharing several Sundays afternoons, and I am passionate about learning every day and sharing different points of view of crypto, fintech, blockchain, etc.
Okay. Cool. Is it Gabriella?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just at the moment it just says G, and so I'm picking up on I'm picking up on the Spanish accent and thinking that's Gabriella.
Yes.
So Gabriella is somebody who comes along as well and asks some good questions and listens and is learning. So that's cool. Great, Gabriella. Good to see you back again. Excellent. Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. JT, just a quick one. Then you went to Ethereum Paris, didn't you? A couple of weeks ago. So anything of particular interest from that you think you could share?
Yeah, well, it was too crazy, to be honest. It was like 50 events, 50 side events, from other layer ones, plenty of them, from Sui to Near to you name it. They were all there, Algorand. So it was just not Ethereum, and I was really surprised. So, I mean, they're all there. But I think the majority of people went there really to make connections. I didn't see much apart from all the announcements they already done, all of these layer ones and layer twos, yeah. So to be honest, there's not much. One of the things that I found fascinating was there was a one day, just one event, a side event, totally different from Ethereum CC, a main event, but that was the ZK day, and it was fascinating. There was quite a few solutions out there, I ended up meeting some new guys that they claim they have solved the scalability problem with ZKs. Yeah? ZKs are great, I think many people in our space love it, and me too, but they're not really, nobody's managed to solve the scalability issues, and these guys are claiming, they call QED, I will post on the, I'll find the link, okay, I'll post it as well on this chat. But it's quite interesting, because if they've done that and they are claiming they can do 1 million transactions per second, then it could be quite interesting,
Okay, and so for those who might be a little bit newer or who are listening to this afterwards, ZK is zero knowledge. So we're talking about things like zero knowledge proofs. So this is the ability to verify that you hold the correct answer to a question without divulging what the actual answer is. Is that a reasonable description of ZK?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
spot on. In a simple terms, yeah.
Yeah. So the example I usually use is if you're asked to prove that you're old enough to buy alcohol, you don't necessarily need to hold someone's date of birth. You just need to be able to verifiably prove that they're over whatever the legal limit is for that country. So 18 for the UK, for example. That's an interesting space. So you just shared a YouTube video. Oh, what's that? Oh, zero knowledge proof. I'll pop it up in a moment.
Yeah, this is it's a lecture I saw recently from A16Z Crypto by a gentleman named Justin Taylor. He's one of the foremost researchers on zero knowledge proofs, and he goes into a little bit of detail about what is and what isn't implied by those claims about 200,000 or 1 million transactions per second in ZK. He questions whether those are practical claims. You can, well, it's an hour plus, but I'll summarize it for you. I installed Zcash way back when that first came out in 2016, I think, or 17. And the thing about zero knowledge is that it takes a very large amount of computing power to generate a proof. Yeah. So zero knowledge proofs are, as you said, Gary, more or less, there's a fact that you might want to conceal, and you just reveal the fact that you know the fact. For example, you can say that my account is positive, and it's no less than 0, yeah, or no less than 10. You can do things like that, and it's very useful for money and for privacy. So this guy, what happens in zero knowledge proofs is you have to construct a proof of the fact or of the feature of the fact, and that takes a tremendous amount of computation. Then verifying the proof is kind of easy. And the whole challenge with zero knowledge proofs is generating those proofs. So the claims about 200 transactions per second or more are claims about sequencing the proofs, but you still need the computing power to generate those proofs. So in order to generate 200,000 proofs per second, when you're claiming that the blockchain is going to accept that much, you need formidable computing power to generate those 200,000 proofs to put them in sequence. Yeah. So the sequencer is fast, but the proof generation, even though it's faster than it used to be, it's still not at the pace where it's actually, well, anybody has the money to do 200,000 proofs per second, but they're actually quite heavy. I remember the Zcash transaction I made, this was very early zero knowledge, but it took like 1.5 minutes to generate one transaction on my laptop. So even if it improved 100-fold, it's still quite slow.
I guess the key thing on that is that it's fairly typical with encryption that you want something that is difficult to encrypt but quick to validate, or to validate that it's correct in some way. So is that consistent with that? It's just the generation of the proofs that's hard, but the verification is quick.
That's a feature of hashes and proof of work. So
Okay.
that you see that there. It's not necessarily a feature of encryption, or a desired feature. You do want to be able to encrypt things quickly. It's only some things that you want to be difficult, and proof of work and generating a hash that matches a pattern. That's one problem where this is useful. Otherwise, you generally want it to be as quick as possible.
Okay. Interesting stuff. What I'm going to quickly do, I'm just going to pop over, because you were kind enough to share that video. I'm not actually going to play it, but I'm just going to pop it up on there. So that's the actual video, and I can include a link about that afterwards in the recording of this. But also, JT also shared, I hope you can see this now on QED. JT, is this the one that you were saying about scalability piece on this?
Yeah, so in Paris, in that event, they were, ZK Sync, Screw, they were all there, yeah? And these guys were the new kids on the block, and I found it a bit fascinating. I admit I didn't have time whatsoever to dig into it and into the tech, but it's very interesting. This bit here, this is what really kind of made me think twice. Maybe it's a new concept, maybe they can do it. So I'm going to have a call with them the next couple of weeks. I already spoke with them. I really want to understand the tech more, because and they're right at the beginning, they're still raising seed and so on, all of that stuff. So I don't know, sometimes people claim a lot of stuff, and when you dig into it, then you find, so I'm just thought that this was the interesting bit really that I saw there.
I would pit these guys if they have their own chain, because usually zero-knowledge proofs are a technology to aggregate proofs on a main chain like Ethereum. If they have their own chain, I would pit them against Grin protocol, for example, and ask, how do you compare against Grin? Grin uses something called homomorphic encryption, which is as fast as regular encryption. And it's basically a coin that was launched quite quietly. It's a very interesting concept where everything is encrypted. It's not zero-knowledge proofs. It's an older type of encryption, but it's quite a robust coin, and it seems quite good. By the way, I fired up the relays.io interface, and I started a little call. It looks like it's extremely good quality. Very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, we're aiming at that, and I can tell you more if you want to have a separate call at some point. It's not a problem.
Sure, I'd love to.
Yeah, it's been building for a while, But the interesting bit is that we want to use ZK, but we're trying to figure out how. My conversations with since February, I went to their event in Israel with Starkware. Yeah. It was probably the only one that is giving me confidence that as the balance, the trilemma, it still applies to ZK, So I don't. We want to build ZK, but we don't know which one to choose at the moment, because it's quite early for a lot of these projects. Mainly because of scalability issues. That's all it is.
So that's often the thing, isn't it? That people claim that they've got scalability until they actually try it. Sorry, Martin was just asking, you're talking about the Green protocol. I think was it Grim protocol, Rex, that you're mentioning?
Grin like the smile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that connected? Am I getting mixed up with things like Mimblewimble? Is that something completely different?
It is an implementation of Mimblewimble, yes.
Ah.
Oh,
There,
interesting.
there you go. So that's something that is being used, I think, with Epic Cache, if I remember correctly, for the anonymity layer or something, if I remember correctly. Because it's interesting. You mentioned Zcash before. Zcash is one of the well, kind of described as an anonymity coin. It certainly obfuscates transactions.
Yeah, well, we could spend so much time talking about that, you know. But, look, and when you look at Zcash,
Yeah, we could
when you
move
look
to
at
another
Zcash,
topic.
yeah, I agree. With Zcash, you
It's a
know,
bit
majority of chains out there is built by devs, you know, at the core, and that's where they fail.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I like Zcash at the time, was because they have really core cryptographers. You know, I always forget the name of that Greek professor from Nicosia University, which is a brainiac in cryptography. You know, they had people right at the beginning that helped them to do that. So I always like Zcash. I'm being really honest with you. You know, but
you don't mean Andreas then?
no.
Okay.
Andreas is a different guy.
Okay. All right. So I just popped up on
He
that.
disappeared, actually. No, I think I saw him the other day here in London.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did.
I think it's been right. So I just popped up hopefully on screen. Is this showing on screen where it's got the grin
we see.
page? Yeah, cool. Just for anyone who's watching afterwards, so you can go and check out grin.mw. So thanks for sharing that. It's really useful. Helps everyone who's watching later on that they can go and research that. Martin, hopefully that answers the question on that. Cool. He says cheers. Brilliant. So it's always fun me trying to facilitate you having the conversation and the text and everything else at the same time. Brilliant. Yeah. So Rex, you talking about various things before. I'm always fascinated by what's going on in the Middle East, and you were mentioning you're based out in Dubai, but you're doing some stuff with Saudi invoicing, that kind of thing.
Well, it's my day job, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. Anything else exciting happening in the crypto world at the moment in Dubai and that? Is that there's a lot of regulatory stuff that's been happening, and they seem to be at the forefront.
Okay. I do have a little bit to do with regulation, so I can give you a take on this. There is a popular movement saying we need regulation, we need regulation, we need regulation, and regulation is being prepared, and there are government bodies that are being announced that do this. My take personally is a little bit different. It's that regulation applies to crypto in some ways, where it is where crypto looks like and works like other financial instruments that we know, securities, etc., or banking. But concepts such as the native tokens on blockchains like Bitcoin, like Ether, like Grin, Zcash, those tokens they look like commodities in terms of the legal picture, and regulators should stay away from them in as much as us holding them or having them, and if any regulation, then if somebody's a broker claiming to hold some for their clients, sure, regulate them, but in as much as it's a self-custody technology, crypto in general, and you hold your own commodities, if I have a few, ounces of silver, or I stock a little bit of tungsten, that's my business. It shouldn't be a regulated activity. The other thing is, in crypto, you also have what's called decentralized finance, which is computer programs that can handle money. Those computer programs run how they are written, but they're not controlled by the authors. So if I'm a developer and I write a smart contract, a computer program that handles money, tokens, that program will work if it's run by someone and they pay for it to be run. I don't. I can pay for it to become available, but someone else pays for it to be run. It's called gas. if this is the arrangement, again, I shouldn't be regulated. It's the user who needs to understand whether some regulation may or may not apply to them. So, long story short, yes, there's lots of talk of regulation, but we're barking up the wrong tree. The talk should be how to stay out of regulation in crypto so that we can innovate. There's a clear path. There should be a clear path toward that. Regulators should understand that. Should understand the distinction between synthetic or security tokens, for example, and native tokens, like the ones I mentioned, the commodities. They should understand the difference between a custodial wallet, like the one Coinbase has, or most other exchanges, where someone manages your crypto for you, versus non-custodial services like the DEXs and the DeFi stuff, the smart contracts that handle your money, where you run them, as opposed to their creators. If the regulators understand that, it will become clear that there is no regulation that applies to those things. But getting that message through is actually really difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Being near the
Yeah, I agree with you, Rex. And on some parts I agree, and some parts I disagree. So I'm a true believer of regulations should exist to a certain point. And you made some really good points there why regulators should stay away of certain things. I totally agree. But, when it becomes cowboy world, the regulators step in. We should all, self-regulation should be something we should have been aimed a long time ago, to avoid this. But instead we didn't, in our industry. So the regulation is actually to protect the end user that do not understand, like you, me, Gary, or other people, as we know, and they get exploited. So on the other side, we look at the poor guy that create, or not, depends how you see it, that create a smart contracts that for a so-called DeFi project was really a mixer, the guy was a dev and he ended up in prison, and he just wrote code. So I mean, there's so many things.
Well, that's actually a very fuzzy thing. I mean, yes, somebody was arrested for writing a computer program, but it's sort of like somebody creating a device for a piece of software, someone else using it for an illicit purpose, and then the author of the software getting arrested.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very dubious charge, to charge a software.
That's why I think. Yes,
for how their product was used. I mean, you can say terrorists use cell phones to detonate explosives. So should the cell phone manufacturer get So should the cell phone manufacturer be responsible? This is in fact what happened with Tornado Cash, which is I think what you're referring to. It's a very, very controversial call on the part of the authorities to arrest that developer.
I agree. So that's why I think regulations helps in many. Actually, if you look back in history, whenever regulations implementing on something new, that actually drives adoption. Regulation has always driven adoption. So I remember the internet. I was quite young when I got internet in 1993. And then it was cowboy land. Everybody was doing everything on internet until the regulations started to appear between 1990.
So what regulations do you mean?
There was not really proper regulations about what you could and could not do. So people.
So could you give me an example? Sorry, I'm going to challenge you on this. Could you give me an example of a piece of regulation that relates to the internet?
So before 1998, I think there was when the Communications Act was updated in UK. Mm-hmm. There was no clear distinction about what an end user could and could not do. In terms of doing illicit operations, I'm talking about hacking, in terms of security. So they had to update to electronic ways of actually people doing certain type of activities, some of them.
Oh, you mean like breaking into someone's computer?
Breaking someone,
Okay, well, all right. Let's just say those are all right. But this isn't regulations for legitimate business. What's happening in crypto? Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I understand that crimes were defined, and like if you breaking and entering into a computer system is like breaking and entering into a company's headquarters or someone's house. That's a pretty obvious statement, and I don't think any startup needs to worry about that becoming law. With crypto, though, what's happening is crypto founders are told, please apply for a license. We're going to consider regulation. Regulation is coming, etc. And then, what the regulators don't have a deadline. And they say, you should apply for a license so we can give you a permit to do your business legally, without stealing from anybody. So actually, the only people that are doing business is the ones who don't care.
No,
Everybody who cares is sitting quiet. They're not allowed to advertise. They're not allowed to have customers because they're waiting for the regulators to give them approval. And the regulators just don't have a deadline. It's been years.
Yeah, so there was quite a few of them, if I'm not mistaken. There was, I think there was the digital copyrights, that was updated because
the DMCA, yes.
Yeah, yes, I mean the
Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Then there was the Data Protection Act 1998, which was also about the data on internet.
So the DMCA was specifically about reverse engineering of software. So if someone writes a piece of software and compiles it and does not publish how it was written, the DMCA specifically says that you are disassembling and reverse engineering that piece of software that is protected by copyright is illegal. And that's also something that I might argue is kind of obvious, or, well, if it isn't, then at least it's not a normal type of business. Like if I were to do some sort of a startup, reverse engineering my competition's work to copy it isn't exactly the shining example of what a legitimate business does, right? So the DMCA did seem to kind of reaffirm our principles and whatever we already
and the
principles
DPA
that we believe in, right?
There's the DPA 1998, which was as well replaced the data protection from 1998 for, because that was not covering digital media, computers, sharing all data across the internet. There's actually the most important one for me was the Child Online Protection Act in 1998 as well, 97, 98, if I'm not mistaken, because, it covered really that anyone sharing pictures of children less than 17 years old and blah, 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 all of that stuff. It was not covered because internet was something, there was quite a few of them, yeah? And those regulations were quite important. And then we saw the dot-com boom really came alight because there was a lot of these regulations that people feel kind of safe. Okay, if I'm going to put something there, nobody's going to copy what I have there. Nobody's going to take my data. I don't know. It's my view. Maybe I'm wrong the way I'm thinking, but from what I understood, that's what really drove the adoption of internet at the time,
Well, if I'm understanding Rex's perspective correctly, it's that all of the regulation then was about preventing traditional illegal activities in an electronic form. So it was
correct. It was just analogs. They were
Yeah.
finding analogs of the
Yep.
same activity in the digital space and applying it. But it wasn't really preventing legitimate businesses from operating, saying you need a license.
No, that's true. I agree with that. Yeah.
I have one question here.
Sure.
If I could add something, sorry for interjecting.
Yeah, okay.
Without any legal framework, I'm coming from business perspective. Without any legal framework, do you think that institutional money would actually come to the industry?
I spent quite a few years working with institutions. I've worked at one of the largest crypto companies in Ethereum doing this. So what I can tell you is that crypto is not ready for institutions, or institutions aren't ready for crypto. It goes both ways. Regulations may be a symptom of crypto being ready for institutions or vice versa, but it isn't going to be the cause of institutions becoming more into this. There already are regulations that my point is basically that there already are regulations that cover custodial transactions in crypto. Yeah, so if some bank or a broker wants to hold Bitcoin for their customers, this is fine according to the existing regulations, as long as you treat Bitcoin as a commodity. And you just say, okay, this is just another commodity, and then you just follow the law. So that law is already there. And in Switzerland, this works, and it's fine. And banks do offer it. Fidelity has a crypto business. JP Morgan now has a crypto business. BlackRock was just announcing a couple of weeks ago that Bitcoin is, a legitimate commodity to hold. So, and that didn't require any special regulation. It's just a recognition of the fact that, well, now we have a new type of commodity. I found, and that's maybe my personal impression, that the lack of, I would say, clear guidance. In Switzerland, there is guidance. FINMA has been very clear about what to do in crypto and even what tokens to launch so that you're not regulated, and it's actually quite useful. When institutions say there isn't regulation, I read it as an excuse because they haven't done the research. If anybody says that, just ask them, how many Bitcoin do you have on your non-custodial wallet? How many Satoshis, or how many Ether? Do you have any? I will bet you that 9 times out of 10, the answer will be none.
Yeah, Martin,
they just don't know.
The other thing I would offer as well is it kind of depends what you mean by institutions becoming involved in crypto. If you're thinking of it in terms of hedge funds, pension funds, investment managers investing in crypto, then the challenge with that is that they typically are regulated in such a way that they can only put funds into regulated instruments. I think they're allowed to put a couple of % into exotic type things, which may not be so regulated. But certainly, if you're a traditional hedge fund manager, then you're not usually permitted to put a percentage of your assets under management into a non-regulated instrument, depending upon what it is. Because this is a bizarre thing that gold, as Rex was intimating before, actually precious metals are not actually technically a regulated financial instrument, but they are a recognized form of investment.
The trading of it.
Say again?
The trading of it, the way it's traded.
Yeah. So in terms of institutional involvement, if you mean institutions investing in crypto, which is a slightly different thing, that's certainly, if it's client funds, then they can normally only invest in regulated products. And so that's why, mention was made of BlackRock before. BlackRock are trying to establish an ETF. So that's an electronic traded fund. So it's a wrapper around crypto to give the client exposure to it.
Note that the activities that you hear is mostly about those institutions holding crypto in the name of their customers, and that's tricky because the security around that is quite difficult. So they're figuring this out, and so institutions, in a way, the technology needs to be mature enough for institutions to do this safely. You lose a private key, you lose the crypto, and that is unheard of in traditional finance, and they need to figure this out. They have technology for holding gold, which is a very expensive vaults with super thick walls and very deep underground and guards and everything, and they know how to do this. But holding crypto for someone is also difficult. If you actually think, I want the responsibility, if somebody entrusts me with 100 Bitcoin and I would have the responsibility to secure it, I'd run for the hills. I don't think it's easy.
So that's where I've got the other perspective, because I'm working with a company delivering what we call it non-custodial custody, in that we've developed a mechanism for institutions to hold the ability to recover things like private keys without actually holding the private keys. So
we have something new now. or WorldCoin on your iris, isn't it? It's going to solve the problem. They're going to scan
Thank
your
God, I've been
iris,
waiting
and that's it. You just show your eye, and you have access to all your money.
or someone else shows your eye.
Or somebody takes your eye. Even the robots that are coming from Sam with his AI.
For those who haven't been following the news, the founder of OpenAI, a guy called Sam Altman, they've just launched what they call WorldCoin, which is a crypto in some way. And what's really interesting is that the launch that they're doing in order to validate your identity is that they're actually doing iris scans. And so it's bizarre because that immediately breaks the boundary between your identity and the ability to have financial value in some way. And so WorldCoin launched, I think it was about a week ago, and it's causing a lot of interest right now. So I've just popped it up on the screen on there. But yeah, I don't even know what platform they're running it on. They've got their own, I think, but it's an app that you can download. But they're actually doing like a road show where they've got this orb device which is used to scan your iris for identity, and they're giving away free WorldCoin in return. From a personal identity privacy perspective, scary stuff.
Very scary. It's
interesting that they're doing this campaign and recruiting users, so to speak, in the developing world. They're not doing this in the it's
in the regulated
creepy.
world.
Yeah, for them, $25, $30 is quite a significant amount of money, Rex. So you're right. Yeah, I find it quite appalling, to be honest.
How safe, in your opinion, is KYC? As nowadays, you are required to KYC everywhere, on every step, literally. If you want to participate in an airdrop, if you want to go on an exchange or whatever, do you think that poses a privacy concern or security concerns?
Yes and yes.
Concerned when I'm asked everywhere to KYC. It's very similar to what they're doing with WorldCoin. Not that drastic, but still, it's a thing of the present.
Rex, I think you were going to respond on that.
Yeah, well, I used to work at a bank. KYC is a requirement where the regulators try to find out whether a transaction is suspicious as it happens and before it completes. And they try to do something called anti-money laundering, just to detect whether known or suspicious activities are being persons or activities are being performed in the banking system, the financial system. So KYC is part of collecting of the data for this AML process. Is it safe? From a pure safety and security perspective, if you look at a database, if you're going to put sensitive information in there and you see what kind of leaks are possible, I have difficulty imagining a world where everything is not going to leak someday. Yeah, it's just a matter of time. Our data is going to leak. It's just like working with humans. I worked in IT departments, etc. And you work with humans, you start realizing that people get sloppy. All kinds of things happen. You might do everything with the best of intentions and set up the best system in the world. In the end, someone or a team or a bunch of people may not implement or may not embody whatever was designed as far as a process. There may be an error that creeps into the software that is just too radical to fix quickly. There's so much software that's installed. It's very difficult to imagine data not leaking. It's going to leak. It's just a matter. Maybe some people get away with it for longer than others, but even U.S. military's data leaks. With Edward Snowden, it's hard to imagine that other data isn't vulnerable to this as well. So KYC is a data security and privacy risk. I don't think there's anything we can do about it.
I do a lot of stuff in the insurance sector, and so occasionally overlap into cybersecurity and cyber risk. And the old joke is that 90% of companies know that they've been hacked. The other 10% just don't know they've been hacked. Everyone's been hacked. Everyone is being hacked. And what's getting really interesting at the moment is that there's beginning to be a recognition of what's known as a long tail risk. And a long tail risk is something that unfolds over several years. And there's a lot of hacks that are taking place at the moment where the data that's being exfiltrated might well be encrypted, it might well be stored securely at the moment, but the hackers are taking the data. In a couple of years' time, they'll be able to decrypt it. And that means there'll be this legacy of all sorts of data unfolding.
Well, let me give you a nice anecdote from computer science, from the lore, and very few people know this story, so I like telling it. There's something called the Ken Thompson hack. And you can look this up. I forget which year this was in. I'm going to try to look this up, the Ken Thompson hack. Okay. And the Ken Thompson hack is basically a proof of concept. Actually, it's an implementation that someone did in
1984. 1984.
1984, yeah. So this guy Ken Thompson,
old man, very old man.
When you write when you write software, you write source code, and then you run a piece of a computer program called it. This is it. A piece of before you read this, there's a quote in there I want you to read, but one second. So you run a piece of software on it to compile it into machine code that the computer can actually read and execute. That piece of software is called a compiler. And what he did is he encoded a hack into the compiler so that the compiler would insert a vulnerability into every single piece of software that it would compile. And not only did he do this because you'd say, oh, okay, fine, so this compiler is tainted, I'll just use a clean compiler. But what he said is, because when you write compilers, you actually use computer software, you use a compiler to compile the compiler as well. It's called, it's a kind of a what's the movie? Inception kind of thing. It happens all the time with computer software. And what he did is he compiled the compiler with this compiler. With this tainted compiler. So it was, in the end, it was undetectable and unextractable from the system. You didn't know that the bug was there, and anything that you compiled with it had the bug in it. And if you recompiled the compiler, it would also have the bug in it. So everything became infected on the system, on basically in the entire ecosystem. And there's a quote about the Ken Thompson.
It was really a generator of backdoors, wasn't it? That's how I know.
Yeah. So what you basically learn is that you can implant a backdoor into any piece of software and be completely undetectable forever. Unless somebody, like, with their eyeballs reads the machine code and finds this vulnerability that's being inserted. It can be completely surreptitious, and it will be inserted into every piece of program and every piece of software that is written. So, and there's a quote about the Ken Thompson, and once you realize that this is possible, you realize there's no such thing as safety or complete security in computers in terms of privacy and the security of data. There is a quote that continue. I'll find the quote, and then
on the practical side, are there any projects that aim to solve this problem? I mean, combining zero knowledge and proof of identity, or something along those lines. That's looking to
depends where you run it.
Excellent question. It's an excellent question, though, because what zero knowledge actually solves is the ability to not have a piece of information and know something about it, right? And it's actually consistent with the way that you avoid this risk. So this risk is any piece of software can leak data. So if you can somehow construct a system that can operate without having the data, that's the solution.
But
Because
someone
you
will can have the data. That's the problem. So it's the end user on the phone, which phones are quite easy to hack, or it's a cloud provider, which, you know, underneath the cloud provider, they actually wrote the software. And the software,
let's just say,
compiler. So, you know.
True, but the vulnerabilities then are local to those endpoints, but the central, so to speak, database or the blockchain or whatever, there's nothing to find there. The data just doesn't exist there. You'd have to actually hack an individual. It makes the problem much more visceral. You know, you can't just, you know, get all the data dumped somewhere with these technologies. So yeah, they are a mitigation.
Well, depends really, isn't it? You're right. If it's in a centralized, you know, then it's easier. But, you know, if you think about, you know, Apple, you know, runs iOS, that runs on your devices, right? Android, yeah, runs on all your Samsungs or all the phones out there. Microsoft Windows, unless if you go to a really truly independent open source system like Linux, even then, depends which Linux distro you use, you still are going to have that problem, because I don't think anyone these days, you know, really understands how deep this is going in terms of your own phones and devices, you know, and what's in the operating system. So that's the problem.
Folks, I'm going to have to call a day on this. It's kind of funny that there's two things. If it can be hacked, it either has been or will be hacked. and secondly, these Zoom calls always get more interesting the closer towards the end without fail and everything. So I don't know, Rex, you're going to try and find your quote just before we finish, but we're going to have to close off for today. And I'm going to have to say, you know, thanks everyone for coming along and sharing some really interesting stuff there. I'd love to carry on with this. Particularly because I was reading the Ken Thompson stuff where he's talking about on PDP-10s, and given I used to code Unix on, I think it was PDP-8s. So so I'm showing my age on that. So, folks, thank you everyone for coming along today. Rex, did you find the quote?
I didn't, but it was something on the lines of "it's the root password of all evil" or something like that. Was the description they used for the hack when it was demonstrated, because he didn't just demonstrate in theory. He actually wrote it and he showed it working, and people were terrified.
And there's always, right, so just before we go, Gary, there's always stuff around there, like for example ECC, elliptic curve cryptography. It's so flawed. There's so many papers written about that, and it's everywhere. Wherever you look, even what you're using today, you know, here, he uses that. So there's a lot of capabilities in governments at the moment to crack it. So you are right. The hackers will download, and then 900K, I can tell you right now, and I'm going to tell you which wallet was, but 900K of computing power on Google or Amazon would have broken a blockchain wallet. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. They fix it, by the way. That's the problem.
But folks, we're going to have to call it a day on that. And I'll say again, you know, Martin, Rex, Gabrielle, Elena, and JT, thanks so much for joining us. I hope you found that interesting. Martin, I hope there's some useful stuff in there. Rex, whoever you really are, thank you very much for joining us, and hope you come back again. Really enjoyed that.
I hope to tell you about my project next time.
Please do. That'll be great. Well, we meet every Sunday, so come along next week and we'll chat about that. Have a great day, folks. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.